Hey guys, this is Justin at the Survival Review, and today we'll be talking about episode 3 of HBO's Watchmen. Now this was another great episode that actually doesn't move the plot forward too much, mostly because it spends a lot of time introducing us to a new character, new to this story, and introducing her world and what she's going through, while also bringing in elements from the previous episodes and kind of continuing the story a little bit. Because the focus of this episode is mainly on the character of Laurie Blake, who, of course, is Laurie Jupiter, the Silk Spectre, and now she is with the FBI, and she hunts down vigilantes dressed up like superheroes. Which was really fascinating. I really liked the character of Laurie in this episode. She was not what you'd exactly expect, especially coming off of the Watchmen story. Although kind of near the end, you kind of start to see hints of the character that we know from the Watchmen story. So that was really interesting. And yeah, I think she's a wonderful addition. And I'm really excited to see where the story goes with her. I like that this episode is actually introducing more Watchmen elements. Like, the first episode felt pretty much like its own story, just making nods to the Watchmen universe. But now I'm starting to see that each episode I feel like is going to introduce more and more Watchmen elements. Because this one definitely has a lot more to do with Watchmen than the last two episodes did. So I feel like that's what they're doing. They're just sprinkling it in, and as each episode goes on, the Watchmen connections are going to get more and more and grander and grander. Because this episode begins with Laurie going to this booth, and you kind of see the Dr. Manhattan logo atop of it. And inside you see her making a phone call to Mars. Basically it's a service where you can send a message to Dr. Manhattan. And you keep cutting to this throughout the episode. She's constantly going there. And basically she's just calling up Dr. Manhattan and telling him jokes. And you can tell that a lot of the jokes she's saying parallels characters and events from Watchmen. Most of the jokes are about these people talking to God and God snapping his fingers and either sending them to heaven or hell. And there's one time where she's clearly talking about Adrian Veidt, because he's basically oh yeah, I dropped a squid on the world and killed millions of people. And every time she talks to him, you can just see all these kind of connections to the characters and story and themes of Watchmen. So that was really interesting. And then right after that, it cuts to her walking into a bank, pulling a gun at the bank teller, holding up the bank, and you're like, what is going on exactly? And then a superhero crashes through the window, and immediately she's just like, oh, huh, were you tipped off by the FBI? And these guys just wait, what? And then all of a sudden everybody in the bank takes out their badges, and this was a sting operation to basically capture this vigilante and arrest him. And she's just so set on taking these guys in that he goes to run away and she shoots him in the back. And you have your kind of typical action movie line where the guy's just how'd you know that his vest would have stopped the bullets? And she just keeps on walking, basically implying that no, she didn't. She didn't give a crap if you killed the guy or not. So that's how her character is now. She's just all dead set against superheroes, which is kind of how she was in the book a bit. Of course she was still Spectre in the 70s and stuff like that, but when the story begins in Watchmen, she's kind of against the vigilante thing, and is always oh man, why'd we go and do that? That was really dumb and silly of us. And this is that, except just a lot more hardened and a lot more cynical. But her character is just great. She has this kind of personality of just she's gonna do whatever she wants. And then you see her later at night going to her apartment and just trying to relax, and you see her opening up this briefcase and you see this blue light shining over her, and you're like, what is that? It almost had a Pulp Fiction, briefcase vibe to it, and you're like, huh. And that, comes into play later. You find out what that is. It's not what you'd expect from the way it's played out in the scene. And there's this cool painting in the background of the apartment showing off this Andy Warhol painting of all the characters from Watchmen. And then you see in the bottom corner there's Laurie, a really young version of her as Silk Spectre. I thought that was a really cool image. There's also a thing in there where she has this owl, and it's in this cage, hidden and everything. I don't know what's going on with that. There seems to be something weird up with that owl. And then also that brings into question she's not with Dan, with Night Owl, and I don't know what happened with that. Why did that relationship seem to end? I don't know what's going on with that, but she does have an owl, so there is still, I guess, some connection. I don't know. Hopefully that'll get explained later on. And she ends up getting a visit from the senator, the one from the last episode, and he gives her the job to go down to Oklahoma to investigate the case of Judd's murder, because he doesn't feel that it was the caliber cavalry that did it, because like he said, the cavalry would announce that they murdered a police officer. They wouldn't just keep it a secret, and they haven't spoken about this event at all. So he feels like something else is up. You also find out that he's the one that passed the act to have all the police wear masks and everything. That was all his idea. So then you have this like briefing scene where all of the FBI agents are going over the events of the case. And you have this great moment where they move the slide to a journal entry from Rorschach's journal. And everyone's just kind of like what? Like, what the heck? And the guy's just like, to the person in charge of the projector, just like, why'd you do this? Like, what's the point of that? He's like, well, I thought I'd give these guys some context. This is Rorschach's journal. And the dude, the head of the FBI is just like, this isn't the 80s anymore. Like, who gives a crap about Rorschach? And then Lori goes to Oklahoma, and you have the scene on the plane between her and her partner, the projectionist, who she asked to come along. And they're basically talking about the past, talking about when she was a hero and everything. And at one point he brings up that, like, did you hear that Adrian Veidt is declared dead? And, a lot of people believe that he faked his death and he's just living in incognito, like, changed his face and is living amongst all the other people and stuff like that. And even she just like, I knew him, not a big fan at all. And, they touch down, and the first scene of them in Oklahoma is her finding where the police kind of warehouse is from the earlier episode, where they did all the interrogation on the people who they think might be cavalry members. And she just kind of nonchalantly walks up to the Red Scare and this other person, I forgot her name, basically like holding up this guy and bringing him in there and everything. And she just goes up to him just like, hey, where can I find the looking glass and everything. And there's this one great moment where she talks to the guy who they have arrested, just like, hey, do you feel like these guys are violating your rights? And he's just like, yeah, they broke into my place, didn't read my rights or anything. He's just like, nah, I'm just joking, I really don't care. Her personality is just great, it's just wonderful. And then she ends up going into the interrogation chamber that they used in the first episode and starts talking to the looking glass and starts asking her just about like Judd's death and everything. She has this good moment where she asks him like, what is this machine? And he basically explains it to her. And she's like, oh, so it's a racist detector, huh? And that's just what she refers to it as for the rest of the scene, just the racist detector, which I thought was funny. And she's asking about Judd's autopsy and everything, and basically brings up that she knows the real identities of all the cops and everything, including Angela. And then basically, after that, you get to the funeral scene, which, Jesus, this scene, okay. So basically it's the funeral for Judd, which is interesting because I mentioned in my last video that I felt that Judd was kind of like the equivalent of the comedian character in this storyline. And in Watchmen, they have the comedian's funeral, and in this one, they have Judd's funeral. So I thought that was kind of an interesting connection. It kind of continues off of my idea that Judd is the version of the comedian in the story, although this funeral goes very different than the comedian's did. Everything's going fine. Angela's reading a eulogy for him. And while that's happening, you're seeing this cavalry member just crawling through this underground tunnel. And I was like, what is that? Where is it leading to? And then he climbs up through this mausoleum and ends up attaching this bomb to him and approaches the funeral and basically just like says, talks to the senator. He's like, hey, you're coming with me. And he's like, don't make any sudden movements because if my heart stops, the bomb will go off. And all of a sudden, just boom, he gets shot by Lori. And then they stop, and all of a sudden you hear the bomb slowly start to like get faster, like it's about to detonate. And everyone clears out, and then it's just kind of nuts. Angela takes the guy's body, throws it in the hole that's meant for Judd's coffin, and then throws Judd's coffin over into there to like cover up the bomber, and then it blows up. Which is like, Jesus, that's the thing. First off, that's just screwed up that she had to throw Judd's dead body basically over that to soften the blow of the explosion. But that was just a crazy scene. I did not really know where that was going. And then we get to the stuff with Adrian Veidt, and you see him making this like suit of armor for one of the clone guys. And basically, he puts the suit on the other guy, and you see this like kind of like a tube attached to him, like they're doing some sort of experiment. And Veidt's like, all right, let's go. This is gonna be great. And then just hard cut to that guy lying on the ground dead. Like his face is all like black, almost like it was like burnt, but his whole body is like all cold and freezing. So clearly whatever Vite was doing didn't work. He gets pissed off, just starts like kicking the body, just all angry, just swearing and everything. And I thought that was kind of really interesting. I'm like, still don't know what exactly he's doing, but it's apparently not working. And then Vite says that he needs thicker skin. So he basically goes to this herd of buffalo, I think it was, I don't remember, to basically kill one of them to, use their skin. And that's where we get to this really dodgy CGI shot of the herd of animals there. It did not look good, which is really surprising because the effects so far have been like top notch in the show, but that CGI shot of those animals, that did not look very good. So basically he shoots one of them with an arrow, like straight in the eye, kills them, the other ones run away, and when he goes to grab it, all of a sudden there's a gunshot, and he looks up and there's this guy on a horse all the way in the corner there, and Vite apparently knows who he is. He's like, oh, alright, forget it, and he leaves. And I'm like, what? Then later on you see him meditating, and the maid comes in basically saying like, oh yeah, you got a letter from the game warden, and it's that guy who's shooting at him. And it's the game warden basically saying like, hey, you can't be doing this, like, I don't know what you're doing, this isn't really safe. And you're like, okay, so wait, Vite apparently lives around the area where there's another person there. I still don't understand exactly, like, at first I thought he was just living in like an isolated castle by himself with clone servants, but apparently there's someone like who's not completely connected to him, at least I don't think. So there's some sort of maybe civilization near him, I don't really know exactly, they haven't really showed us yet. But then, Vite decides to write his own letter back to him. That's where we get the name reveal that, if you've been reading up on the show, you already know by now. But that's where you get the name reveal where he goes like, signed, Adrian Vite. And that's where it's like, oh, it's Vite. And then he goes like, let's go hunting. And he puts on the Ozymandias costume. Which, one, was just crazy seeing like the comic accurate Ozymandias costume in live action. I thought that was really cool. And it's just weird seeing Jeremy Irons dressed up as Ozymandias. That's just something I never thought I'd ever see. And he looks good in it. It looks really cool. But also that's where the like Watchmen stuff is really starting to kick in. You reveal his name and then you see him in the costume. So you have that and you have like the numerous references to Dr. Manhattan and like Laurie being in here. So it really feels like they're starting to kick the Watchmen stuff into gear here. And then you get to the scene at night where Laurie is investigating the mausoleum where the cavalry member came in at the cemetery, and Angela is there and they're discussing stuff, and you basically find out that Laurie has basically figured out like everything that's been going on in the last 2 episodes. Essentially, she knows how Angela works and basically knows that Angela faked passing out in order to get into Judd's bedroom to look behind the secret door. Like, she figured all that out. And I love the line where Angela's just like, well, why'd you think to look for that? And she's like, well, when my dad died, they found a secret door revealing something. And so, it's just something I check for all the time now. And I'm like, like the comedian when Rorschach, found his uniform behind the secret door. I'm like, that's great. I love that little subtle line there that could just be a throwaway line, but if you know Watchmen, you know exactly what she's referring to. So I really like that. And Laurie is also piecing things together involving Judd's death because she found wheelchair tracks right outside the tree and everything. So she figures that something else is up. Of course, Angela's acting oblivious to it. They don't really like each other. They don't really get along at all. So there's a little bit of conflict going on between them. It's going to be interesting to see in future episodes. But then after that, you have Laurie goes back to her hotel room and she has that briefcase with the blue light familiar and opens it up. And the first thing you see in there, which I thought was kind of cool, was like an Esquire magazine from the 80s where it's her and Dr. Manhattan on the cover, which I thought was really neat. And then we find out what's in the briefcase, and it's essentially a giant blue penis. So not exactly what I was expecting, but then she kind of looks at it for a bit and then decides against using it and goes next door to her partner's room. Cuts to a bit later on and she's lying into bed after they've had sex, and earlier in the episode you kind of see that that character's a little bit infatuated with superheroes. He has an actual superhero mask and everything, and you see that guy wearing that mask in bed sleeping, and she's just lying there. And I thought that really harkened back to the Laurie character in the book, where, like I said at the start of the book, she's all like, oh, this is a stupid idea, vigilantes shouldn't be doing this, they're so bad. But you could tell, near the end, when she decides to dress up with Night Owl to go save the people in the burning building, that there's still something about that she's kind of infatuated with, that she still likes. Like, there's some sort of connection between her and superheroes, even though she's totally against it and, like, literally has an own unit that fights vigilantes dressing up as superheroes. Deep down, one, she still misses Dr. Manhattan. There's a lot going on with that. But also, I feel like there's something with her kind of missing that life of doing that kind of stuff, especially... I don't know, maybe that's just me looking too much into just the simple shot of the guy with the mask on, but that's what it kind of feels like. It feels like it's kind of like similar to how she was in the Watchmen book. But then we cut to the ending of the episode, which is the last scene of her in that booth calling Mars. And what I really like is at the end, when she finishes her joke, and the way she ends the joke is almost exactly like how Rorschach ends his joke in Watchmen, with like roll snare drum and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, that's an interesting connection. And, you know, she has a tear running down her eye after, like, trying to, like, send this message to Dr. Manhattan. And then she walks out and leaves the building and starts walking. And all of a sudden, Angela's car just drops down right in front of her. And then she looks up and sees some sort of, like, dot in the sky, which kind of, like, makes her happy. It just makes her start laughing. And that's where the episode ends. So I don't know if that's hinting that, like, that's Dr. Manhattan up there, and, you know, maybe the character Will has some sort of connection to Dr. Manhattan, because remember in the last episode he was like, you know, maybe I'm Dr. Manhattan. And that's clearly like Angela's car that got picked up by, like, the magnet thing at the end of the last episode. So maybe there's a connection between Will and Dr. Manhattan. I don't really know. So overall, like I said, I really like this episode. I like that it's kind of, you know, adding more of the Watchmen mythos to it. I like the introduction of Laurie's character. I think she's a really good character. I really like her, and I really want to see, like, where that goes. I still don't know what's going on with Adrian Veidt. That just keeps getting weirder and weirder, and I want to find out more every episode. I don't know, it's still great. I'm really enjoying it, and I can't wait to see where the story takes us in the next episode. So yeah, that's all I have to say about episode 3 of Watchmen, and until next time, I'll talk to you guys later.